Welcome to the RPG After Years, your weekly show covering all things RPGs from the past, present, and future. I'm Scott, and with me today is my special boo thing.
I'm the Phantom Thief known as Corey.
That's right. This is episode 36. Today we'll be finishing our review of Persona 5 Royal. Since it's a review, we won't be doing any catch-up or anything like that. Today, we will be covering the gameplay, the additions to the Royal version of the game, our own rankings, and we'll be covering your questions and reviews. But before that, let's talk about the save state of the podcast. Actually, I forgot to ask for reviews, so I'm going to redo that. Since it's a review, we won't be doing any catch-up or anything like that. Today, we will be covering the gameplay, the additions to the Royal version, our rankings, and your own questions. And God damn it, I did it again.
I knew you was going to just delete it out of the doc. That way you don't.
There we go. And our ratings. I should have asked for reviews and shit. I didn't even think about it.
Oops.
Because I'm sure we would have got some. Since it's a review, we won't be doing any catch-up or anything like that. Today we'll be covering gameplay, the additions to the Royal version, and our ratings. But before that, let's talk about the save state of the podcast. Alright guys, the RPG After Years has a Patreon that is causing societal reformation. Corey, since you're a patron, why don't you tell the fine folks about it?
All right. So if you go over there and throw these guys some money, you're going to get a few things. The first being early episode access. This one's going to be a little weird, but usually you get it a couple days early. You don't have to listen to the guys talk about Anchor or anybody else because you get ad-free episodes. You get the Aftercast. I think the guys just recently recorded one. And it's just kind of they get together and shoot the shit, a little more loose lip, if you will, a little more relaxed. You'll get extra reviews. There's a shit ton of reviews that Scott and I have done over several Nintendo games, a couple others. You get to participate in what we're actually doing right now, the RPG Club nominations. Nominations are currently open, so our patrons actually get to nominate a game, and we're going to vote on which game to play for RPG Club. And plenty more. So go over to patreon.com/RPG After Years.
Yes, please do. We appreciate every contribution. Speaking of, we have a new patron. I want to give a shout out to Skeleton House. Thank you very much, Skeleton House, for throwing us some dinero. We really appreciate it.
Welcome to the party, buddy.
Another announcement, as always, we are live on Twitch right now. Corey and I are actually streaming a little bit later than usual. It's a Wednesday evening, and we're enjoying a few libations. So if we seem a little looser than usual, that's why.
Or can't read so good.
Right. But usually we are live every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time at twitch.tv/RPG After Years. The reason we keep announcing this is we really want everybody to get in the chat and join in on the fun. You can, we'll read your thoughts and opinions live on the show, be a part of the show and all that. Also, Corey mentioned the RPG Club a second ago. So for those that don't know, that are unfamiliar, it's basically the hosts and the patrons all decide on a game that we are going to be playing as a community. It's basically like a book club, but with, RPGs. We just finished Wild Arms, and the review for that one is in the work. As of this recording, nominations are going on, and voting will begin this Sunday on the 11th. So when this episode goes out to the public, I believe voting will be well underway. It'll be interesting to see what ends up getting picked. And again, that's just one Patreon benefit that goes on. You can participate in the nominating and voting for whatever game the community is forced to play. Quote, forced. Hopefully it's something that we all enjoy.
Rich.
Right? One more announcement. We have some new artwork. It was given to us by a very good friend of mine and Corey, Mrs. Dizzy. She and her husband are Twitch streamers. They do a lot of art commissions. They're great folks, and we're really happy with the art. It basically shows all of the hosts as like a Final Fantasy job class. So I'm a warrior, and like Corey is a thief, Rich is a dark knight, Bill is a mystic knight, and Jay is a red mage. And we're really happy with it. We're going to be using that for some promotional purposes. But I recommend checking it out. Go to our Twitter. It's probably one of the more recent tweets. And you'll see it on our thumbnails going forward. And check out Dizzy D'Lo and his wife, Mrs. Dizzy. They're great people, and they help out the show quite a bit. But that's it. We're not going to cover any news since it's a review. And so with all that out of the way, we're going to take a quick break before we move on to the review. And for anybody that is joining us live, Corey and I are going to take a quick shoot ski to loosen up a little bit more.
Really let it flow tonight, huh?
Right?
Oh boy, here we go. I got to work tomorrow. I might regret this one.
To the Persona 5 review, my love. Our shot glasses have Donkey Kong stuff on them. And for anybody that's interested, I am drinking Kraken, which is a black spiced rum, and Corey is drinking Incinerator, which is just like a
cinnamon whiskey.
It's a less sugary version of Fireball. It's
a much better version of Fireball.
Yes,
and a little more expensive, but so worth it.
I've got Kraken and Mountain Dew in my main drink here.
Kraken and Diet Pepsi.
So there you go.
Got to get those diet drinks. Zero calorie.
Okay, so do you need to do anything else before we get rolling here?
Not right now. We'll see how it goes. I might have to drinking this. I might have to take a potty break at one point, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. Okay, starting back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, and with all that out of the way, I was reading the wrong thing. Alrighty, let's get back to the review. We must take our time. Next up, it's gameplay.
Say your prayers now. Take over, stop to put it down. Make over, nothing's gonna fade away. My life was over when it started with that the white sparkling eyes. Game's over. Take over, stop, take it down. Make over, nothing's gonna fade away. My life was over when it started with that the white sparkling eyes. Game's over.
I love that one.
Was that from the original one, though?
No.
Really?
That is a new one from Royal. That's the main battle theme in Royal, but you know that
It sounded like there were some backup vocals, though, that I didn't recognize. That's why I asked.
do you remember the when you get surprised or when you don't get the jump on enemies, it plays what's the name of the fucking song? There's two versions of the normal battle theme. The other one, when you don't get the surprise jump on this one, was the main battle theme in the original.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's just one of the many changes to Royal.
Must be why I didn't really recognize that one much, because I usually got the jump on them.
Right. So I'm going to ad-lib, just freeform, basically how Persona 5 plays. There's like two main gameplay loops, basically. It's like when you're in the real world and in the metaverse. which is, as we said in the past episodes, is like just an alternate version of reality. It's where your dungeons and all your fights are. So in the real world, you have to do like time management and sort of experience a lot of the story and deal with your personal relationships and work on upgrading and shopping. There's all kinds of things you do. And then in the metaverse, you do dungeon crawling and fighting enemies. Um, that's simplifying it to a pretty great degree. Is there anything like you would think that's like super major that I'm forgetting, Corey?
I mean, if you're just trying to give like an umbrella top down kind of view, I would say that's the best way to put it. It's like real world is meant for advancing story and getting ready to go into the metaverse, and metaverse is actually like how you're going to further the like main story.
Right. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's also the Velvet Room, which we'll talk about, which is sort of like its own thing. That's also just more like party setup. But to my understanding, the main difference about the Persona games from the Megami Tensei games is that the Persona games focus a lot more on interpersonal relationships between characters, like the whole confidant and ranking system and all that. That's like unique to Persona, I think. So that's one of the main differences. But I guess we'll just dive in here. We'll start off with like the overworld, the real world version of the game. Basically, you just like sort of go through your daily life. There is a calendar system, and it goes from day to day. And certain things happen on certain days. There's certain story events that are set on certain dates, and unless the story forces the day to go past where you are, you sort of have an option as like, what is the most effective way to spend my time? So just in like a very general sense, that's not a very common thing in RPGs. So how did you feel about that, Corey?
About the calendar system, like as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I liked it. It kind of made you move along. You know, it didn't. It's not one of those. It's not a grinding game for the most part. So
Yeah.
I liked it.
I guess the only thing I could say against it necessarily would be, so the palace owners that we've been talking about in the past episodes, there's always a deadline, as far as you have until this date to defeat them and, unlock the next major story arc. If you defeat them early, which is preferable because that gives you way more time to focus on just strengthening Joker and your relationships with other characters, that means you have a couple weeks worth of days between, major story events potentially. So that kind of threw off the pacing for me a little bit.
Well, to be fair, though, I do remember even I was a little annoyed early in the game because they gave you like so many days before a deadline. Like for instance, I think Kanashiro's palace, after you send the calling card, your deadline is like 23 or 24 days later. So yeah, you've got a lot of days, and yeah, you think, okay, well, time to prepare. By the time I had done everything, like I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't spend any more money at the gun shop. I couldn't talk to any more confidants. I couldn't go work. That's the only options I had was like go to work. And then it was like, all right, come on, let me just like speed through these last, I don't know what, 7-8 days. I was like, all right, that's going to be kind of annoying. But to be fair to the game, as it went on, and as you got to more difficult palace owners, the deadline did tend to shorten a little bit, and you had a lot more that you could do in between sending the calling card and the deadline. So later on in the game, I actually appreciated having those longer deadlines.
Yeah, it's just the only issue, I guess, is like I said, it's advantageous to clear the palace as early as possible. And so if you do it that way, it's like, well, you're set up for a bit of a dry spell with the plot.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there were palaces that I finished on, I don't know, maybe my second go through, and I still had 12 days until the deadline, but I still had enough to keep me busy for 12 days.
Oh yeah, it's not that
Maybe
there's a lack of
plot
things.
development wise, yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely not a lack of. There's never a lack of things to do. You need like a fucking guide if you want to get everything
Oh,
in
yeah.
one run through.
But I think that's more of like as a watcher, yeah, I can see where that could be a little dry. But playing it, you're like, oh shit, okay, cool. I've got 10 days. I'm going to visit the gun shop. I'm going to spend half a day with Ryuji. I'm going to spend half a day with this confidant. I'm going to go to this city. I don't know. Later on, it really like I appreciated it, and some of those palaces that were like kick ass hard. For instance, what's his face's Okumura's palace. It took me all the way up until like 3 days till the deadline to actually clear the palace.
Yeah, there was one or two where you was cutting it kind of close.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely, I personally didn't have a problem with the deadline. It was a little boring early, but
We might talk about this later, but the whole thing with having to like your options if you fail is you can go back a week or you try again.
oh, we'll talk about that.
So
I've got a lot to say about that one.
I bet you do. So that was a problem with Okumura for us in particular. But anyway, so outside of the calendar system, it's a very unique thing in RPGs, and it does introduce the idea of missables. But I guess because of this calendar thing, like almost everything in Persona 5 is a missable.
Almost every single thing could be considered missable.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting system. I do appreciate the uniqueness of it for sure.
Maybe it's just me, but I kind of, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I like that. I like knowing that going into this game, I cannot do everything. So you kind of have to, maybe it goes to my love of like strategy games where like you have to pick and choose what you're going to do. So plan out what you're going to do in a strategic way to make it the best outcome for you.
Yeah, actually, I think that in Royal, it is possible to do just about everything in one playthrough.
Do you imagine?
That would be crazy.
Jesus.
But in the original version, I think it was impossible. Like you had to do a new game plus if you wanted to like see everything.
Phew.
But that's aside the point. Back to just general elements. While you're in the overworld, your home base is Cafe LeBlanc. There's a lot of things you can do there. You could build up your relationship with Sojiro, Joker's like the guy that took him in. And let's see, you can
study.
Yep.
You can study, which will advance your knowledge. Every now and then you can do the crossword puzzles, which advances your knowledge. You can brew coffee, which in and outside of battle you can use on a team member, and it replenishes, depending on your level of coffee brewing, it replenishes a certain set of SP. You can cook curry, which I think goes into your inventory and heals HP and SP, or it might just be SP. I can't remember. I know it revitalizes you in one way or the other. You can buy off the Home Shopping Network, but that's only on Sundays. You can talk to some patrons of the cafe and get like some general like knowledge. And then if you go upstairs to your room, you can organize your bookshelf, which I don't think does anything for you. You can water your plant, which helps your charm, I think, charm or kindness, one of the two. You can play video games, which helps one of your stats. You can craft items that help you in battle. I think that's it. And then you can, of course, go to sleep to cause the calendar to go to the next day. There's a lot you can do.
Did you mention crosswords?
Yes.
That was my favorite thing.
I know, because every time I did a crossword, like your eyes would shoot to the screen, like, all right, let's figure this thing out.
I'm like Stanley in the office. She's like, I'm just going to do my crossword.
I know every crossword. I did every crossword. Even though my knowledge was maxed out, I did every crossword.
Yeah. I will say it is a good thing that you can do so much at the cafe, because
I know what you're going to say.
This is actually kind of a major complaint that I've heard about the game, and one that we feel the same way about. Um, there are many days where it will not let you leave the cafe past a certain time. Um,
I think
not that
it's
the
like
game,
if you. I think it's only if you did like a story plot on the first half of the day. The second half of the day, when it switches to evening, that's when I don't think it would let you leave because you already
right,
did like quote a story thing.
and it's very frustrating because there's so much out there for you to do. And meanwhile, Morgana's like, "Don't you think you should get to bed?" It's like, God damn it.
It's like fucking cat. I'm trying to like go do shit.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I think I read somewhere that Morgana is actually a lot more lenient on that in Royal.
Oh Jesus Christ! Could you imagine the original then?
Yeah, I know I can't. So
Ooh.
we didn't say it at the jump here, but Corey and we have not played the original. This is just the Royal version
Yeah.
that we've played. So
After playing this one, I probably won't play the original.
I don't see any reason to really.
Yeah.
I
This
don't
one
really get why you
was.
would.
This one was already enough of a good experience.
I guess maybe if you don't like all like the third semester and all the news story content, maybe. But
Maybe.
that was like the best part of the game for me. So, but we'll get to the Royal stuff later. So when you're outside the cafe, there's many like different districts of Tokyo that you can go to. It's like Shibuya and Yongen or is that
Yongenjaya was a subway station, I think, or was that where Cafe LeBlanc was?
maybe.
No, Yongenjaya was where Cafe LeBlanc was.
You can go to like Shinjuku and Akihabara. Like there's a bunch of different areas you can go to.
Yeah, there's a bunch. There's so many
And
that I didn't even get to go to all of them.
yeah, I did notice that our map wasn't filled out, which I don't know how you do fill those out.
Well, no,
But
the map was filled out. I just never got to go to the places that filled in because I learned too late in the game how to fill the map in.
yeah, that makes sense. Um, so to get between the different places, you have to use the subway, which is, I mean, not really a gameplay element, but you just go there. And real quick, I will mention I did really like the transitions when you're moving between areas where it's like the silhouette, like anime characters just like going about their business in the background.
Like looking into a subway train.
Yeah, that was basically your loading screen, and that was pretty cool. Um, Another thing that you can do during your daily life is part-time jobs, which is I think I'm going to let Corey talk more about that because I'm not sure I understand completely how that system worked.
So it's kind of a mixed bag because the first one I had was at that grocery store, and it was just to like, depending on which part-time job you take, it increases one of your, what should I call that? Your the Pentagon that had like knowledge, charm, kindness, guts. It's like a, I don't know, it's not a skill tree, but it's like your stats, your five
Yep.
stats.
You have like a personal stat thing.
Yeah. And depending on which job you take, it can increase that stat, but you also get paid yen for your time worked. And there was just a couple parts where you had to take a certain job to get like a certain story element or to get this certain rank with a confidant, whatever. But for the most part, the game left it up to you to pick where you wanted to work: a grocery store, a noodle shop, a flower shop, kind of whatever. And then just if you found, if you find yourself with some free time, like it's evening and you've done everything else and you don't know what to really do, and you just kind of want to get some yen because there's a weapon at the gun shop, which is expensive. You just go to work, and then you'll increase one of your stats and you'll get paid yen, and then you go back home. So that's the whole point of the part-time jobs, was to one, build stats, two, get yen, and every now and then to get like a little story plot thrown in, like the flower shop one where it was the guy in Mementos. He was going around the Shibuya underground mall and like terrorizing people, but to figure out his identity, you had to work at the flower shop for like 3 days.
Which was good because whatever stat it was that you get by working at the flower shop was the one that you were always the lowest on.
Yeah, it was kindness.
Yeah, kindness. Makes sense. Just like
Shut
real
up.
life. No,
Shut up.
Just kidding. I remember you worked at the convenience store, the gas station or whatever.
That's the one I worked at the most.
I remember that you worked like one night at Lala Escargot's bar, and I was like, why isn't he working there more?
I did work there one night, but it was just one night.
Yeah. Which I was
But after
disappointed.
that, I didn't work there anymore.
Why not? Oh, honey.
I think it was because the stat that working at the bar
That's true.
improved.
You didn't
I didn't
unlock
need
it
any more.
until like late, and at that point, most of your stats were maxed,
Yeah.
except for kindness.
Except for kindness, which that's why I ended up going to the flower shop.
Right. Yeah. And I think there was like something else that like the kindness unlocked, like you mentioned. But
There was, but I don't remember what it was.
another thing you can do with your time, like we sort of mentioned, there's like this whole confidant system where there's like, 12, 18 characters. There's like a bunch of characters. It includes your main party where you can sort of boost their ranks based on basically hanging out with them and making correct choices on dialogue trees. And each character has like their own little side plot and all that. But if you do choose to spend your day doing that, that's what you did that day, basically.
Well, the half day.
Right. So you're always getting texts from everybody, and they're always like, "Hey, you want to hang out?"
Hey, you want to meet me here?
Yeah, and I was often like, "Let's all hang out. This will speed things up." But
Yeah.
I guess that's in real life that it works the same way, where you can't really boost your own interpersonal relationships if there's a bunch of other people around. So I guess you can go to restaurants. The only thing I remember Big Bang Burger, and
That was there was that one. There was the noodle shop with the one that Ryuji took us to.
oh yeah, and there was that fancy buffet too.
There was the fancy buffet, but I don't think you could go there outside of the story. I think the story had to take you there.
Oh,
And there was one in what's the name of that city? I should have pulled this up before we started recording, but it was the city where you remember the one you went to where right to your left was Justine and Caroline. They had the meat shops and the back alleys and the clothing store. That whatever
Kichijoji?
that's. Yeah, that one, Kichijoji. I think
Uh,
that was the name of it.
yeah, there were a couple of restaurants there, but restaurants aren't the main thing. I just remember very vividly the Big Bang Burger challenge.
Oh yeah, because I tried that one multiple times.
That was like something you really focused in on early.
I don't know why, but I needed to do that.
Well, I feel like that's what real life Corey would focus in on. So
Absolutely.
it's basically like you have to eat. Joker has to eat like a gigantic burger, like the size of his chest, and the burgers get progressively bigger as you go through.
You got a reward for it. I remember just wanting the reward.
I think it was guts, like it upgraded your gut stat,
Maybe that was it.
something like that. But that was interesting, and then especially because you had done most of that before we got to the Okumura arc, so it was like,
Oh yeah.
oh, it was tied into the main story the whole time. Because Okumura owns the Big Bang Burger chain, which is like his claim to fame. Like Corey mentioned earlier, you can study to improve your knowledge. Every now and then it'll give you chances like, okay, what do you want to do with this time? Like when you're waiting on the train, or if you get extra room in your homeroom class, or extra time, I mean, you choose to study to up your knowledge. Did it help with the exams at all?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it just increased your knowledge.
And then you can go to the movies. I only remember you doing that a couple times.
I did it once, I think.
Yeah, that's why I don't really remember it.
Yeah. There's so much to do.
There's a baseball thing? Did you ever
There
do
is.
baseball?
There is. It's in Yoganjaya. No, it's in Shibuya. And there's like these upstairs like batting cages.
Oh yeah, we went there. Wasn't it like part of Kasumi's confidant?
Yeah,
Or was
we
it
went
once?
once. We went once with I think it was on, and then I went once by myself. But I was like, this. I think it helped your guts, and I was like, I got enough.
This is one of my favorite things to do. You can go to the bathhouse.
That idea in theory is great, but there was also like old guys in there, and I don't want to share water with old guys.
That's ageist, Corey.
Hey, I have my preferences, okay?
Well, the only reason you ever go there is because you're probably working on like your confidant rank with one of the other male characters. So I assume they're naked and in the hot tub. And so that was racy and spicy, even though it's like a very normal thing in Japan, I assume, and in America, I guess. But like, ooh, they're naked in the tub together, and
I think bathhouses in our community have a different meaning.
yes, that would be a whole side tangent. But regardless, you can go fishing. I don't remember you going fishing a lot. Did
I
you?
went fishing once. I didn't. There was no need for me to go fishing.
Every Japanese game needs a good fishing minigame or
Apparently so.
JRPG. Yeah.
Every goddamn game.
You can go to the gym. Did you ever go to the gym?
I went once.
Just like real life. No.
Well, Ryuji took me there for something, and you like run on a treadmill, and I forget what it does for you. It does something.
Yeah. I've got a list of activities you can do here if you guys can't tell that I'm sort of going down. One of the main things you can do is you can create equipment for use in battle. There's like a weapon shop that you can go to create model guns that, you know, in the metaverse are real for some reason.
Well, you don't really create them. You buy them off the guy, and then you can pay him an exorbitant amount of money to upgrade them.
His name was EY, right?
EY.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I just really liked that weapon shop because it had like the best shop music I'd ever heard.
You did every time I went in there. He's like, "Oh, my jam."
I was like partying when you went to the weapon shop.
He was expensive as hell, but that's the thing I also noticed with him is typically after you would finish a palace, he would have new weapons available. But most of the palaces had like a hidden chest that had a specific weapon for a specific member of your party. So if you found it in the palace, you're good and clear. But a lot of times, not every time, he would offer the weapon for sale, but it was just like an insane amount of money.
Yeah, and he had his own like whole confidant arc that we didn't finish.
Yeah, I got to
But,
like 5.
What other like upgrade stores were there that I'm not thinking of?
Upgrade store. There was
There was Dr. Takemi.
there's Dr. Takami, who you could buy medicine off of. You could buy certain. She also sold later on in the game. Once you reached, I think you had to reach a certain confidant level with her. You got a discount, but on top of that, she sold amulets and another item that you could wear that was like SP regeneration and I think SP regeneration.
Right.
But you could also just go and like buy a shit ton of medicine from her.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember others, but I mean, there's lots of stores all across Tokyo.
There's one in that city you mentioned earlier,
Kichijoji.
Kichijoji. I don't know if that's right or not, but it was the clothing store. I think you could actually. Oh no! It wasn't at the clothing store. It was at the laundry mat across the way from Cafe Leblon. If you found sooty clothes, which is apparently like a new thing to Royal, you could take them to the laundry mat and wash them for a certain amount of money. And when they came out, they were like an upgraded item of clothing.
Yeah. So those are the main shops. Like, it's very important to your development. You can't just do it through your normal, menus and shit. What else? There's lots of shops where you can just buy like random shit.
Yep.
We already mentioned the texting, where you're constantly getting texts from your party members and confidants about what should we do next? Should we go to the palace tonight? Do you want to hang out today?
Basically, every time the day advances, you get a new set of texts.
Yeah. And sometimes they're okay, but a lot of times I feel like this is where the story got like repetitive. Because I feel like you would have a big scene about what was happening in the story or do a confidant rank or whatever. And then they text you and you go over like the same things that you just talked about.
I could see that.
But it was an interesting mechanic nonetheless. While you're at the cafe, you can watch movies. It's just like a little blurb scene. What is it? What does that do for you?
It helps one of your stats.
One of your stats, yeah. We already mentioned the clinic that you can go to. we talked about stat boosts. There's like 5 major stats that's like Joker's interpersonal abilities. It's like kindness, bravery, or kindness, guts, knowledge, charisma,
And
and
charm.
and charm. Yeah, charisma and charm. That kind of seems like it's the same thing.
I can't remember if it was charisma or not.
Maybe. Um, but there's like certain activities throughout Tokyo that you can do that focus in on a specific stat. And that's why I kept telling Corey, like, all right, your kindness is low. We need to find out a way to boost that. And apparently the flower shop is the only way to do that outside of like specific confidant arcs.
Well, that and watering the flower upstairs in your bedroom, which I didn't fucking know until too late in the game.
I was wondering, I didn't notice you doing that until late in the game. And I was like, oh,
Because it helps your kindness.
yeah, because I was like, I guess I wasn't paying attention, but apparently not.
Yeah, I learned way too late in the game that that's one way to do it. And apparently the only way to do it outside of getting a certain job.
Yeah. There's a bar that you can go to that has a couple like mini games you can play. There's like billiards and darts. I remember you go there as a few times as part of the story,
Yeah, you go with a catchy a couple times.
but I don't think you actually get to play the mini games, right? It's just like you do these things to boost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a little cut scene.
I'm trying to remember if there were any like real mini games. I guess like during dialogue it will give you button prompts sometimes. But
There wasn't any actual like playable mini games, if you will.
right. One aspect that I was a little interested in that they give a lot of focus to is the weather. The weather, you'll go through seasons like summer, spring, fall, rainy season, heat wave season, flu season even. Um, that affected the enemies in Mementos. Am I remembering that right?
Yep. Certain types of enemies that were of certain what do you call them? Like the judgment or arcana. Enemies of certain arcana were affected by whatever weather was happening at the time.
Gotcha. I just thought it was interesting that they focused in so much on that because it's like part of your UI, like what weather it was, and it didn't seem to affect a lot.
I was about to say I didn't really have to pay attention to that a lot. I mean, there were a few times where like I would attack an enemy and it would like give me a quote weather boost, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But it wasn't anything like I super paid attention to.
And something that you have to do most days is go to class, go to school. That's how your day starts. You take the subway to Shujin Academy, and then you have there's like a set of 4 or 5 classes that Joker has. It'll be like a random one. It's probably not random. It's probably based on the calendar or whatever. But basically, for some reason, the teacher in that class always calls on Joker.
Always.
And if they call on, then Morgana's like, help on out. And then you have to answer anyway. Because Joker and On have classes together. But so this was an interesting thing because it's always based on, it's like just a random piece of information, it seems like. That has nothing to do with the game, really. Unless you do like a deep dive analysis on, maybe themes. But it gives you like a multiple choice answer. And a lot of it's really obscure. But if you use like the network options, you can see who, like the percentage that other players answered. And of course, the correct answer is always going to have the way higher percentage chance. Although I don't think we started relying on that until about maybe midway through the game.
Yeah, it was a little bit later.
Wait, I think it took us a minute to figure that aspect out.
It was.
But it's something that happens all the time, and it's just an interesting thing.
Well, it also boosts your knowledge if you get the question right.
Right. But one thing I found more interesting was the exams, which happens at the end of each like quarter of the school year. Because these exams, I don't think the exams gave you the network option to see what other people chose.
They did not.
And they were all like questions you've been asked before.
Right.
And they could ask you a question that was like from like 20 hours ago in the game.
So pay attention to the questions.
But the exams even have like their own theme music. I kind of liked the exams, to be honest. But it also makes them seem like I don't know. I just felt like the classroom stuff a lot of times felt like meaningless compared to like what was going on in the main story.
It's just throwing it in there to remind you that like you're a high schooler.
Right. Did you what did you think about like the classroom questions and the exams and all that?
Um, it was kind of cool just to get like random trivia knowledge, especially about like Japanese culture.
Right. And so I guess the last thing about the Overworlds gameplay is the Thieves Guild. So that's the name of the online functionality where you can see what other players are doing. But it's
Heads up, I
also
didn't spend a lot of time there.
yeah, it's also like sort of a hub thing for Joker. It's supposed to be like his palace, I think, canonically.
Kinda because you're able to like quote purchase music tracks, rewatch cutscenes.
It's like a museum mode.
Yeah,
Cutscenes,
you can
artwork.
view your awards.
By the way, I read that apparently you can control any of the main characters in there, which is not
Oh
something
shit, I never got to.
yeah, we went there like 3 times total.
Yeah, it was eventually. I think after my third time, I was like, all right, there's nothing here for me.
Yeah. And then that whole thing is like sort of Jose is there too. I think that the whole Thieves Guild thing is like a new thing to Royal too, also though.
Probably.
Yeah. But that's basically it for the overworld gameplay. And I thought that maybe this would be a good time to go over any of the confidant arcs that we wanted to talk about in particular. Did you have any like favorite confidant arcs in particular, Corey?
There's so many of them.
Didn't we finish Dr. Takami's?
Yeah, she was a rank 10 because I had five rank 10s at the end, and one of them's a given that is going to be a 10, and that's Igor.
And
and
Sai.
and Sai I think only goes up to 5.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I know that hers is purely story based, but
I think hers goes only up to 5, kind of like Kasumi. She only goes up to a 5. But those were maxed out. My other 10s were Dr. Takami, Maruki. Actually, I think those 3 were my only 10s. Mishima, that's right. I had Mishima. Honestly, out of the ones that I finished, none of them truly stand out. I finished Mishima just because he was so like gung ho about wanting to help us and running the fan site and all that. So I wanted to make sure to finish him. Looking back, I would really, if I could pick one confidant that I did not max out, but I could go back and max them out. I would probably go. I would probably go Makoto or maybe Justine and Caroline just to see where that one was going to go because, like we talked about in past episodes, that's actually one person split into two different sides of her personality. So it'd be interesting, I think, to see where their little like confidant story arc went.
Justine and Caroline's were interesting because their confidant arc were way different than the other characters. Because
Yeah, all it was take me somewhere.
well, all those not even that. It was based on the persona fusions you did. Apparently, they give you requests that it's like, okay, do this specific fusion, and then
I don't think I ever got a request. I really don't.
Either that, or we must have just missed the first one and then never seen it again.
That, or maybe like I just lucked into it because I know
because we were still rank 1 with them at the end.
Yeah,
after
but
doing,
I
4
went on
scenes
like
with them.
yeah, I was about to say I did like 4 different scenes with them.
Yeah, I did enjoy those scenes, by the way. Makoto's was interesting because it was like a really weird thing. Like she was trying to protect a random student in the academy, and she had to pretend to be like with Joker as part of that, which was interesting. I thought On's was boring. Yusuke's was boring. Futaba's was more interesting because hers was more about getting out into the world.
Yeah, that was a
Haru's
good one.
Most of the main characters' confidant arcs were semi boring to me.
Haru's was about getting out from under her fiance.
I did enjoy Akechi's because that was like uh, flirting with the villain, kind of.
Yeah,
Um,
but we kind of quote had to max that one out to get the third semester.
right. Like I said, we didn't, or Corey said, we didn't get very far with any of them. Kawakami, the homeroom teacher, her arc, I thought was one of the worst. I hated it.
Yeah, just didn't understand. I mean, it was like to get money for her sister's medical treatment.
I did appreciate the idea that a teacher would have to work multiple jobs and be hard up and have to like degrade herself to be able to live successfully in the world.
Doesn't Japan have socialized medicine?
I think so.
I mean, wouldn't it be paid for?
Yeah, I'm just saying that like just to show that like teachers are hard up too. I mean that's especially true in America.
Well, yeah.
But I just found it kind of demeaning. I don't know. I was creeped out because she's one of the romance options, and she's like this anime maid in her spare time.
Yeah, hers was weird the whole time.
Yeah. I really liked Oya's actually because she's
See,
always.
I found hers less interesting. It was just about like teaching her boss a lesson.
Well, what she had like a colleague that was like her best friend that disappeared all of a sudden one day. I think I liked Oya just because she was always drunk. So,
She was, yeah, true.
and you always get to deal with Lala Escargot when you're dealing with her. So
Yeah, she's always at the bar.
you got Chihaya, which is the fortune teller, which I had no idea where that one was going because we didn't. Hifumi, the shogi player, I thought she was the most boring of the bunch, like the most boring character probably. To me, anyway. Which is when I read that she was originally planned to be one of the main characters, I was like, oh, bullet dodged. I'm sure there are lots of Hifumi lovers out there. And then we had a couple others. Shinya, the little gamer boy, and Yoshida, the politician. We barely dealt with them.
There was the public speaker. That's Yoshida, right?
Yeah. But so I guess you already went over your favorites, and I guess I just did too. One day, I would like to see how all those stories end, because it's not that I wasn't interested in the storylines. It's just like it could have been better,
Well, we also don't know how they ended. Most of them we were like in the middle of, so we can't really pass judgment.
Okay, but I guess that's about it for the real world gameplay. And actually, I need to take a piss. So
Yeah, I do too.
I'll go. You entertain the people, and then I'll come back and entertain.
Oh, I have to entertain the people.
Yeah, not that there's many to entertain, but
Mercy. Oh Lord, we're going on an hour. And we are one bullet point in. Out of 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5, 6 bullet points. And then the first one took an hour. Now, granted, that first one, dear old Scott, in his normal way, was very detailed. Oh, hi, Mark. Is this the Mark I think it is? If I say record keeper, would that tell me who you are? At least I think that's who it would be. I nailed it. Awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mark. It's a little weird for us to be streaming this late. My old ass is usually parked on the couch by now. There's that handsome fella. He can't hear me yet, so there you are.
I'm back.
Hey, a friend of yours joined us on Twitch.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And I was also telling them how we're already like an hour in and we've only covered like one bullet point out of like 6.
Let's see. We're at about 50 minutes. So
I'm going to run. I'll be right
speed
back.
it up. All right. Mark, thank you for joining us. How are you doing, my man? Um, so for those that don't know, Mark is like my Final Fantasy record keeper buddy. I talk about record keeper on the show sometimes, but he's like the oracle mastermind behind that. He's always like giving me strategies and shit. Did you make a Twitch account just for this, Mark? I'll wait for you to respond. Let's look at the Twitch log here, actually. See what else going on. Also, Mark, your timing was interesting because you messaged like right when we went on like a small break. I don't know if you were if that was truly when you looked in or if you happened or you were waiting for like some kind of break. I know you don't really know what we're talking about with Persona 5, but feel free to chime in or ask questions. We'll read them live on the show. You say, I had one the last time you and Corey streamed. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Back when we used to do the Scott Spot to Twitch. Yeah, I remember. Good times. I sort of miss those times, but at the same time, don't. It's interesting how that works. Interesting. I don't see you in our users in chat thing. Oh, wait, there's a refresh button. There we go.
Much better.
You're back. You ready to continue on?
Let's do it.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, another thing you can do while you're out and about is you can go to the Velvet Room, which, as we mentioned last time, it's kind of like a prison area that that Igor, the warden, is over. And basically what you come here to do is to like work on your personas. And you come here a lot as part of the story, but like it's always seems very disconnected from what's going on in the main story until later. So I'm gonna let like Corey sort of talk about the kinds of things that you do here.
So when I would go to the Velvet Room, the only thing I would ever go there for is, like Scott said, to work on my personas. And the main thing you do here is persona fusions, which basically what you do is, because as you go through this adventure with Joker and as you battle these enemies, a lot of times you'll go into what's called negotiation with these enemies. And these enemies are all personas. So if you win the negotiation, which is basically where they're going to, like they say, they don't want to go with you unless they know who they're going with. So they're going to ask you questions. So what they do is they will ask you 2 questions. And you can't get a wrong answer. You have to get at least I don't know what it would be, like a middle of the way answer and then a right answer. Some, depending on their level, you have to get 2 right answers. But if you get the questions right, they become a mask and they go with you and you have a new persona, like quote unquote, in your back pocket. And then you can take these personas to the Velvet Room and you can do a fusion. Now you have a choice where you can fuse just 2 personas together to make one new one, or you can sacrifice 3 personas to make one new one. And each one, depending on which personas you sacrifice, gives you different results, different levels, whatnot. The other part of this is whichever personas you decide to sacrifice, you can basically, however many skill slots your new persona has, it's going to come built in with usually at least like 2, sometimes 3 moves already, and it'll have some empty slots, and you can pick some of the old skills from your old personas and move it to your new one. So that's one way of doing the persona fusion. You can also do where you can like give Igor items, and then those items power up your personas. And then once you power up your persona, you get like a new item in return, because it takes your persona, blends it with your item, you get a new item. I never really did that because I had enough items and I liked my personas. So I did that. There were times where I don't know if it like something in the game triggered it, but alarms would go off. And basically, what you did in an alarm was you would go and do a persona fusion, but it would come out more powerful because there was an alarm going off. But that's about all I ever did in the Velvet Room. You can also if you have enough yen, you can like buy certain personas from the the directory, if you will. You could register your personas that way. Like if you ever did fuse a persona, and then later on in the game you wanted that persona back, like the exact one that you had. If you registered it, you can just go pay some yen, usually like 20,000-30,000 yen, and you get that persona back. A lot of times I would buy personas from the directory and then turn right around and fuse them just so I can get a new, more powerful persona. That's all I ever did in the Velvet Room.
So, like I said, I usually like stopped paying attention almost entirely while you were doing this.
He did. He never watched me.
But like, how do you feel about these systems? Did you like them or think they were unfair or like annoying to use or like very?
No, I loved them. I thought they did a very good job of laying out how it worked. It always gave you kind of a preview of if I fuse these two personas, what's my result? It did a very good job of laying out like this is what's going to happen. You could back out of it until the last minute.
Wasn't there a random aspect to it too? Like the executions could go wrong, or
that was during the alarms, and that I was actually literally about to discuss that. So during the alarms, what tripped me up is when you first got there under an alarm, Justine and Caroline would say, "Oh, there's an alarm going off," and they would kind of like coach you up, like, "Oh, you can fuse more powerful personas during an alarm." So I would always pick two personas, fuse them to get, sacrifice them, fuse them, and get the new one. And then once you got the new one of the girls would tell you like, "Ooh, it's overflowing with power. If you sacrifice it, there's no telling like how powerful your next persona would be." So I would try it, and like the guillotine would always fail. And if the guillotine like failed, then the fusion went wrong, and you would not get the persona that you thought you were going to get. It was usually a weaker persona. You didn't get to pick like what abilities were going to move over, any of that. So it kind of like ruined your persona sacrifice. And I think I did it 2 or 3 times until I finally caught on. I was like, okay, here's the deal. You can't, during an alarm, run the guillotine more than once. So that's when I just stopped doing it. So during the alarm, only run it one time.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's move on to the palaces themselves then. And like we said before, the palaces are basically the dungeons of the game, where you have to like sort of make your way through sort of a maze of areas and solve puzzles and deal with certain issues. And each palace is kind of unique from the other one. I sort of thought of it as like Zelda's dungeons almost, but it's like, Sai's Palace and Okumura's Palace and all that. So one thing with the palaces is it makes it impossible usually to complete them in like one day, or one go through, because you only have a certain amount of SP, and you really need that to be. It is SP, right? You really need that to be successful in battles.
Yeah, SP is how you basically use a lot of your persona's attacks.
Right. And so you have deadlines, but it's going to take you several runs typically to get through a palace. And then once you're past that deadline and if you completed that story arc, you cannot go back. So hopefully you find all the items while you're there. There's treasure chests that you sort of swipe through. A lot of times there's stealth mechanics as to whether or not you can get a first strike in battle. But I didn't find that too bad. Like I think you've got like the stealth, like the first strike thing, like 95% of the time.
Yeah, they make it easy. They make it easy to do that.
Which is kind of disappointing because I think they might have added that because of the whole Phantom Thieves aspect of the story. But at the same time, it's like it barely ended up mattering.
It played into it well enough because also you could like fuck up, and if you were trying to like do stealth, if you like snuck next to a door, it gave you the option to like open the door, or if you, each palace had its like the hidden things where you could get collectibles. And if you did like a stealth move next to that and tried to break it, if an enemy was nearby, they'd see you. So then
yeah.
you were screwed.
And along those same lines, each palace also has like a security meter where it's like, okay, here's the alert level of all the enemies in the area. But and it based on the story, it would go up or down. But I don't really remember that ever being like a concern or an issue of yours either.
No, because I think the security meter determined like how many enemies there were and like how easy it was for them to spot you.
Right. You can sort of jump and grapple around like a thief would, but it's basically just button prompts as you move through the palaces. And by the way, I think the grappling might have been like a new thing to Royal.
Oh, really?
Uh, I don't know how that would be considering that you have to do it to get around the palaces a lot.
Yeah,
It
I
seemed like
literally had to do it multiple times.
yeah. We already talked about like the enemies appear as like kind of formless shadows, and then when you advance on them, they turn into the actual monster you're fighting. So it is nice that the enemies are like on screen. There's no random battles in this, which we just talked about in the last episode about how that's an annoying thing about RPGs.
Really? I've not listened to that episode yet. So
Treasure chests everywhere. Um, there's safe rooms, which are basically where you go to save. Um, that was a big problem for us.
are we ready for my rant yet?
Go for your rant, honey.
All right. So my absolute biggest complaint about this game was hands down, no autosave. I think the only quote autosave feature built into this game was when you finished a certain day and you went back to Cafe LeBlanc, but you had to be like in a certain story part and have to have done certain things. And then every now and then you'd go to Cafe LeBlanc and this like save thing would come up like it was auto saving. Never fucking worked for me, that's for sure. So there were multiple times where if you didn't find a safe room, then the game's like, fuck you, you're on your own. And there were multiple times where I would go to a safe room and it's like the palaces are set up in blocks. Basically, you want to go from one safe room to the next safe room. And there were some palaces that had literally chunks of gameplay between safe rooms of anywhere from 3 to 5 hours before you would ever see a safe room. So I would literally save, play 5 hours, and something would happen. Either I'd get into a battle and Joker would die, because another thing about the battle system is if Joker dies, it's over. You're done. It's not necessarily, I won't say full game over, but then you have options where you can replay the battle. You can go back to the title screen, which will basically erase everything that you did that day. Or you could go back 7 days in the story on the calendar system. Those were your options. Every now and then, I think only during boss battles, it would give you the option to go to the prior safe room. But if you got into like just some random encounter and they whooped your ass, you would lose gameplay. So I think there was a total of 4 to 5 times where I lost hours of gameplay. And I think we decided I ended up losing around 18 to 20 hours because there was no autosave.
Jesus, that much? I knew we lost a lot, but
well, for instance, that one day I played all day and lost it. And that alone was like 5 or 6 hours in one session.
see, I'm of two minds about this because on the one hand, like I grew up with having to manually save. So it's like, well, you should have saved. But on the other hand, this is a PS3 and now PS4 game. And I think the expectation is with games these days that there's an autosave.
It's a late stage PS4 game.
Right.
Like,
And
how
this
do
is the
you
Royal
not
version.
have an autosave on a late stage PS4 game, especially when safe rooms can have up to 5 hours of gameplay between them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it literally does not give you the choice.
And this is probably your biggest complaint about the game overall, right?
Absolutely, because I think I could be wrong. I never tested it because I was too afraid to do it because I'd been screwed over so much. The only way, actually, no, I don't think if you're outside of a safe room, I don't think you can leave the palace. I think the only way to leave the palace is if you're in a safe room. So the autosave at Cafe LeBlanc wouldn't matter then either. So yeah, so the only places to save are the safe room. Even
Right.
even after like a main story part, like you beat a boss, it gives, I think it like waits to give you the option to save. After
So
after certain story parts, it wouldn't even give you the option to save.
I think some people would probably call this a nitpick, but for you, it actively made you enjoy the game less.
Yeah, oh
So,
yeah.
and I had to watch it all again too, so it did suck.
Well, I'm just so used to games like that having autosave.
Yeah, I agree, but I
So
guess we'll
yes, that rant over.
Um, when you finish and you get to the treasure, you finish the palace, you have to send a calling card, and so you come back the next day. And for the first like 3 or 4 palaces, we thought you actually had to go all the way back through the palace, but you can just warp to the end of it, which is kind of sad actually because the calling card track is such a banger in the palaces. Um, but that's about it for the palaces. But there's also Mementos, which is sort of like a dungeon you can go to any time between palaces, and it works a little bit differently because the dungeons are, like sort of randomly generated. You're basically riding in the Monovan as you go through like these randomly generated train tunnels, and there's like 20 levels of tunnels to go through by the end of the game.
There's more than that.
Yeah, I think there might actually be a little bit more.
Actually, like there's certain sections that have 20 levels just to themselves.
Yep. And these parts, like, there's random monsters that'll come out, and you can find Jose and do his shop thing during this. But otherwise, it's just like dungeon crawling and grinding with no, like, little to no plot advancement. So, I've heard a lot of complaints about Mementos from just like the general community. What did you think about it?
I do remember early on in the game, you told me that the main complaint that you had heard was about Mementos and that it was just like, that it just like dragged on and was boring. I could see where that's coming from, but also I only see it if you spend a lot of time in Mementos. Mementos is good if you have to do a lot of grinding, but I never found myself having to really go there and grind. I found myself going there because there was a new like person ID'd that I need to go get to, steal their heart, or a piece of the story was in Mementos waiting on me. And even then, like each level got progressively harder. You found new enemies, so I got new personas, which was one of my favorite things to do because, as you saw, I went into negotiation with almost every persona I could find. The atmosphere got different, because each level was like a different color. The maps always were like just randomly generated, which I thought was cool. You couldn't just memorize your way through. You could find chests with like unique items. So I didn't get the Mementos hate. I can see how if you spend a lot of time there, yeah, it's boring. But I had no qualms about the Mementos.
Yeah, I mean, I found it kind of boring, but I wasn't the one.
Well, you did because you were watching
Yeah.
instead of playing.
Right. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in particular about Mementos here. There's Jose's shop, which we didn't figure out until like the end of the game, that you can buy the will seeds, which are missable collectibles that you can get in the palaces.
Oh yeah,
From?
and once you got all three, he would like craft you a new like accessory.
Right. And then you also get like random quests if you are doing like side stuff, to where you find out like targets that you can go after in Mementos.
Yeah,
They're
the
like,
ID'd people.
yeah, they're like mini versions of the palace owners. Just like people that are kind of fucked up in their life and need to be sort of have a talking to, kind of. And those are like sort of mini bosses that you can track and hunt down in Mementos. And then, as we said earlier, the weather effects. What's going on in Mementos?
Oh yeah.
But that's about it for the actual palace exploration, and I can't believe it that it took us this long, but we are now at the actual battle system. Um,
Well, that's fine because I got a lot to say about this one too.
cool. All right, so just to start off, there is a difficulty level. We played on normal, I think,
Yes.
and we never tried a different difficulty level. I think we might have tried switching the difficulty level once when we were fighting Okumura. Because
I didn't even do it then.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't sure. I remember a lot of people were recommending like changing it to harder to make Okumura easier. Something.
Yeah, I was like, fuck that.
Well, I mean, I kind of watched this stuff, but maybe I should just let you talk about it.
Wow, this is gonna be a Corey episode, huh?
Oh yeah.
All right, so I'll start with what you've got here with melee versus range. So you do have two options of how to deal damage to these enemies you come to. You can obviously use your each person has a weapon, a handheld weapon, and you can physically attack them. But then you've got two options for a ranged attack. Everybody has a gun that you can use once per battle, and depending on the person's gun determines how much damage, how many bullets they can fire, yada yada, how many enemies they hit. But the other option for ranged is your persona. And your persona, like we kind of discussed earlier in the Velvet Room, you kind of build your persona so you can choose, build, kind of do it the way you want. This is where you can kind of customize your personas to fit how you want to play the game. I tried to build my personas where like I had one persona that like specialized in each certain like I guess you could call them types of attacks, like ice, fire. Like I had one fire, one ice, one psi, one curse. Like that's how I liked to play it. And then once you get stronger personas, you can actually double them up where like I had one fire, one curse, stuff like that. So, but to do this, you have to use either SP or HP, but your persona is usually going to be the route you take because your persona can deal more damage than what you can do, typically what you can do physically or with a gun. However, physical damage and gunfire damage is considered an actual, like, I guess you call it an elemental type. So some enemies are actually weak to physical harm, which your personas can also have like physical attacks. And some are weak to gunfire, which your personas can also have gunfire attacks. Typically, I relied very heavily on my personas. Only used range and gun attacks when either it was a weak enemy and I knew I could just take them out real quick, or if I knew they were weak to range or gunfire and I wanted to save my SP. That's when I would do it. As far as using the personas, it's really easy. It's a button click. I think it's triangle. Your persona comes out and this really cool flare of a cutscene where the person like spins around a little bit. Your persona comes out. You pick your attack and go from there. I kind of already discussed the elements. There's physical, gunfire. There's fire, ice, wind, curse, light, bless. There's a whole like slew of them. It's kind of like Pokemon.
A little
And
different than the usual elements that you see in games.
yeah, there were several like new ones for me. Like
And it even counted like physical and ranged as like elements almost.
it counted physical attacks and gunfire attacks. So like some enemies were actually weak to gunfire, which was kind of cool. But overall, as far as up till now, I loved it. I loved using the personas. I loved having to strategize with figuring out which enemies are weak to what elements. Because when you go into battle, if it's a enemy that you have not used a certain type of attack against, it won't tell you if it's weak or strong against it at all. And the elements are actually, they play another role where they not only can be weak or strong to it, but there's also like, they can reflect it. So like if an enemy has like reflect on lightning and you use a lightning attack on it, that enemy is going to bounce the lightning back at you and hit you. There's also drain, where if they have like drain against wind and you use wind, it actually heals them. Then there's also repel, where if they have like repel to fire and you use fire, they just block it and it does no damage. And then of course there's weak and strong. So I thought that was really cool. Kind of played into it a little bit more. You had to really pay attention to the elements. If it's a new enemy or like a boss, when you start battle, you know, when you click to use your persona, it brings up the element tree for that enemy up top on your screen. And then below it, as you use those attacks, it fills in like weak, strong, repel, whatever.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
But at the start of the battle, it's always full question marks. So you kind of have to like take a guess, like, what's this one going to be weak to?
Which was kind of a problem when it came to bosses, like enemies you only were going to fight one time.
Yep, exactly. So, I mean, you kind of go into it and you, at first, you just kind of play a guessing game and you figure it out. But it kind of rewards you for enemies that you face multiple times to use every single element you can against it in multiple battles. That way you can figure out, like, what's it weak to? What's it repel? What's it drain? So I loved that it's when you talk it out, it sounds a little complicated, but as you play it, I really enjoyed that aspect.
Was there
really
no way
made
to do like a scan or a Libra to like find that out?
as far as I know, there was not. You just had to. It was trial and error. So some people I can see hating that. I liked it because you kind of had to strategize and figure out what they were weak to.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So moving on, I've already kind of touched on this.
Another major complaint.
If Joker dies in battle, you're done. It's kind of a game over in a way. And that's when it gives you the option of, like, do you want to go back to the title screen and basically just start all over? Do you want to go to the last safe room you were at?
It's kind of like a FF13 in that way.
I don't even remember FF13 being this bad though.
Well, if the character you're controlling dies, you're done in 13.
Oh yeah, but you can. I feel like it restarts you a little bit sooner than what this one does.
That's true. In 13, you always get the chance to like just retry the battle or restart right before the battle.
Yeah, this one it's restart the battle, go back a week, go back to a safe room or the title screen.
Yep.
So that was a big complaint for me, because if anybody else dies, you can literally let everybody on the field die. Usually you've got 4 people on the field. As long as Joker stays alive, you're fine.
Yeah, you can be doing very well in battle, and then Joker gets one-shotted.
Yeah, and that happened multiple times to me, where Joker just out of nowhere got one-shotted. And like my whole party was set up, I was good to go, and then boom, just done. And there were multiple battles where like your strategy was just protect Joker. Like just wait the enemy out and use everybody. If everybody else dies, fine, just protect Joker. So I didn't really care for that aspect of it, where if Joker dies, you're done. Because I felt like it was just a big setback, even if you were trying to like set yourself up.
Yeah, I thought that was stupid too.
Yeah. I kind of touched on this earlier with knockdowns. Once you knock down an enemy, you can run up to them, you can negotiate with them, and then it gives you this really cool like art style where you can pick, like, do you want to negotiate with them and kind of like try to make them become your persona? You can do an all-out attack, which just makes everybody like beat the shit out of them, and then you can just cancel out and like they return back to their normal state. A really, really Oh, wait, that wasn't a knockdown. That's a hold up. Sorry, that's a hold up on an enemy. A big, big part of battle on this battle system is called the baton pass.
I really liked this part.
I loved this part. So what the baton pass does is, if you are a character and you can hit one of your enemies with an element that they are weak to, they get knocked down and kind of like dazed and stunned and like kind of taken out of battle. But if you can do that, the person you attacked with gets another turn. But if you take that turn and pass it to somebody else, it's a baton pass, and the person you passed it to, all of their attack goes up. Their attack ability goes up. A lot of times their HP goes up. And then you can do that over and over and over again. So especially like towards the end of the game, there's like a certain battle that takes place where the whole strategy is just attack with a weakness, baton pass, attack with a weakness, baton pass, and do it over and over and over again. But it was really cool because you could baton pass to whoever in the party you want. They don't have to be the next one up. You can pass to anybody, but you can only pass to them once per turn. But that was a really cool element of battle where you had to like think like, okay, so I'm Joker now. I know this character's weak to this attack. I'll use it. Who's next? I want to use Haru because I know this main character is like weak to Sai. So I'm going to pass to Haru and like up her attack. But for every baton pass, your attack goes up higher, higher, higher. So if you can do like 4 passes, that fourth person gets like an ultra boost. So it was a lot of planning.
That was actually like the key to some of the hardest battles in the game was effectively baton passing.
That was the key to the first phase of Maruki, I believe. No, second phase of Maruki was baton pass every single time and make sure that last baton pass lands on a catchy.
And the animation is cool. It's like the characters like sort of high five.
Yeah, they high five,
and it makes you, even though it's like a required thing of battle, it makes you feel awesome. Like, yeah, I did a baton pass.
Yeah, it's like it's like the old school wrestling thing where they would tag team.
Yeah,
it's like you're just tagging somebody else in. I thought that was really cool. I've already talked about negotiations, the all-out attack, where basically if you can down every enemy on the battlefield, when you go to like negotiate with them, you can pick all-out attack, and then everybody just beats the shit out of all the enemies. And if you actually defeat all the enemies, whoever initiated the all-out attack gets a really cool like cutscene, kind of anime comic book style screen, which I loved because I loved the whole fucking style of this game. But I thought that was a really nice, just like touch that Atlas put in there. Their showtime, which I don't think I unlocked all the showtimes because I didn't really understand how to unlock
I don't know either how you actually unlock those.
But I unlocked several of them, and what showtime is like at random points during battle, once it becomes somebody's turn, if their showtime partner is on the battlefield with you, they do this like really cool tag team thing, and they get their own cutscene, and it attacks sometimes all enemies, sometimes one enemy, but it does a lot of damage. So it's like an ultra attack between 2 people on your team against an enemy. And then let's see, moving on. Sorry, I'll fix that. Items. I didn't start using items until like later in the game when battles started getting really hard. And it's usually like to revive somebody. But there's a lot of items in this game, and they do a lot of different things. You can up your defense, up your attack. Some of them, if you up your stats, it's going to lower other stats. You can revive people to like half health. You can revive people to full health. You can put up barriers. You can put up, change weaknesses. There's a lot of items in this game. That was one of the more, I won't say complicated, but you really have to like know what you're looking for.
Right.
You can guard also, like if you don't want to like attack an enemy, if they're, like if they can drain every attack that you have, you can guard. And that way when they attack you, you'll take less damage. You can switch between party members because as long as you're Joker, if you are Joker, you can switch party members in and out, which I didn't learn until like halfway through the game. But if you're Joker, you can switch your party members in and out.
Which was cool. I love RPGs that let you use any characters whenever you want.
Oh yeah. It was just weird that you had to be Joker. He was the only one that could switch anybody out. So
he's the leader.
Apparently leader is the only one that can do that.
Yeah.
Bosses.
You specifically requested that you wanted to talk about certain bosses. I don't think we have time to go into detail on each one,
I want to talk
but
about one boss,
go ahead.
Okumura.
How did I know?
All right. Rumor on the street is that in the original game, Okumura was like the easiest boss. So for Royal,
At least one of the easiest. Like he wasn't a problem, apparently.
yeah. So apparently for Royal, they wanted to fix that. In my opinion, in my very strong opinion, they overcompensated way too much. This boss fight was so hard and so difficult that I literally put the game down for like 2 weeks. Literally couldn't play it anymore because I was so frustrated. And the way it's set up is he has like these waves of these robotic enemies come out 4 at a time. Each set is weak to a different element. But you have to defeat all 4 enemies at the same time because with your personas, as you, for instance, like On's persona learns a lot of fire skills. So as you level up, you get these constantly upgrading fire skills, but they not only upgrade in like attack stats, they also upgrade where like instead of just hitting one enemy, they can hit all enemies. And all the personas do that. So he's set up to where you have to take out all 4 of the enemies that he sends out at the same time. You can defeat 1 and leave 3 on the field. Problem is, though, with his battle, if you defeat 1 of the enemies and not all of them, you risk the chance of them running off. And if they run away, it starts all over again. And there's, I think, 4 waves. I could usually handle the first 2 waves, no problem. Once he gets to like the 3rd wave, I think the issue was they were weak to, I don't remember what they were weak to. I think it was Sai. And Haru was my persona that knew Sai. She wasn't strong enough to take all of them out on the same turn. So they were constantly refilling, constantly. But once they refill, it's their turn. So they just beat the shit out of you. So then I was trying to heal, so I couldn't attack to take everybody out. And I tried this battle over and over and over again. Hours on this battle. They overcompensated this one singular boss way too much.
Oh yeah, Corey was raging, and like honestly, I was trying to help and look up strategies to assist him, and none of the strategies were really helping either. Like we even tried using one of the new like DLC things that's supposed to make you overpowered, I think, and that didn't work either. Um,
Yep.
so maybe there was just something that we weren't getting about the strategy. What ended up being different the time that you won?
I have no clue. I literally have no clue what I did different because I felt like I kept the same strategy, but I just I think what I may have done different is I learned that you could put up barriers to protect yourself, but you could also up each other's attacks. So I think once I got to like the 3rd wave, I started playing defensive and like buffed myself, and then spent 1 round debuffing them,
Yeah.
and then attacked them.
I was kind of upset too because I remember it really seemed like we had hit like a wall of some kind, and I wanted to see what happened next, but it was
Oh, that was that was one of the most frustrating things I've ever done in a video game.
But in general, the boss battles are pretty cool in the game, like the palace owners.
Oh yeah, I mean once you, especially even in that boss, once you get past the 4 waves of employees, it's a piece of cake.
Well, at that point, it's just like beat the shit out of them. But
No, at that point it's you have to let fake Haru explode.
right.
So as long as you protect Joker, you're fine. And then just use anybody to do any sort of hit against Okumura and you're done.
Yeah. Well, I think that about covers the battle system. Like just in general, like how did you feel about the battle system?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was I I loved the layout, loved the art style, loved the animations, it was so easy to understand what you were doing. They packed a shit ton of stuff into the battle system, but they didn't make it so like convoluted and complicated that you couldn't pick up on it really easy. So
Yeah.
I think they absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, and I like I said, I never played it myself. I just watched Corey play it. But it is a turn-based battle system. But from what I absorbed from watching him, it really seemed like they had like enough unique spins and twists on what is unique about this particular battle system. It seemed like a really cool system.
Oh, I loved it.
Like
One of my favorites.
even though I didn't always like completely understand what was happening, like I thought it was really cool myself, even just watching. So, um, there is DLC, but I think it's mostly just like costumes and unique personas that you can use in battle, things like that.
I think there's like 6 unique personas or something like that.
Yeah. There is a new game plus, so if you want to go back through the game with, keeping all your upgrades and stats and all that and see more of what you missed the first time through, because it's almost guaranteed unless you're following a guide, you missed a lot of shit.
I will be doing that.
You can see more of that. As far as the enemies go in general, they're very weird looking, and
Are
it's
they?
like they have a lot of like flavor to them. It's hard to describe. You would just have to see them, but they're like each design is more outrageous than the last, more or less.
They've got a lot of character.
Yeah. One that stands out in my mind, there's like a well-built man in a Speedo with a leopard head
Yes, and
double swords.
like tiger paws.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really weird.
And the one I wanted to make sure that we touched on for a second, there's like a mini boss at one point. It's like a chariot, but the chariot is being ridden by like a giant like dick looking creature. Like it literally looks like a penis. Like you can't look at that and see anything else.
No, it is a penis. It is absolutely a penis. It is a giant green penis on a giant green chariot.
And it's like,
And it has a mouth.
yeah, which I mean, I do like that they didn't really pull any punches with the design. Like this is not a game for kids at all, really.
No.
I wouldn't say it's like a mature game either. It's just like you don't often see like a full on dick in any game. So
No, but it was a full-on dick.
yeah. So that was weird. And there's lots of
I
other
do
weird.
I do remember when we battled that and it popped up. I remember being like, Cody, is that a dick? And he was like, that's a dick.
It's a full cock. But I'm trying to think of others, but it's like almost every single enemy design is like kind of out there.
Well, there's some that's out there and there's some that's kind of like traditional, like Japanese samurai. There's like 4 different takes on like a Japanese samurai. There's like a take on a Japanese gods. But then there's just weird ass shit too. So
Right. And even some of the bosses are fucking crazy looking.
yeah, like a kind of Shiro
And Kamoshida.
and Kamoshida. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about it for the gameplay. We did want to take a second to just go over the differences that Persona 5 Royal introduces. I'm going to kind of like treat this like a lightning round because we are running a little long. So obviously
I got chatty. Sorry.
that's okay. I'm glad you covered it in such detail. There are the new characters, Kasumi, Maruki, and Jose. They were not in the original at all, apparently. And along with that, the whole plot of the third semester. And those 2 things alone, that makes Royal worth it to me.
Absolutely. Third semester was great.
Yeah, it really, like I said in the last episode, it really pulled like the whole story and the game together for me, personally. It's hard to imagine it ending where the God of Control arc ended.
Yeah.
For me originally. Apparently Kichijoji, that area was not somewhere you could go in the original.
That's weird. Well, I guess that makes sense because the first time you go there, I think, is to meet Akechi.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy because I felt like that was like maybe the 3rd most important area that you could go to.
I wouldn't call it important. I went there a lot just because of the certain shops that were there.
Yeah. Darts and billiards were not in the original. I think you only went there maybe once, but apparently there's a jazz club that was not in the original.
I went a couple times because you could hang out with Akechi there.
The city clothing, that's the new thing to Royal. The aquarium's not in the original. You do get Akechi as a confidant, I think, in the original, but there are no like rank up scenes with him. It all happens automatically, which was very interesting to me because I thought that Akechi's confidant things were usually some of the more interesting ones.
They were.
All those little side stories where you take Caroline and Justine around in the real world, those are new. Um, which I always thought those were like pretty interesting too, because it's fish out of water type situations, kind of
Yeah.
humanizes them a little bit. Um, you can give gifts to male confidants, so I guess they took one step at least into no homo territory.
We're getting there.
Um, we already touched on you are allowed to hang out at the cafe more often at night. It's not as strict on you as to what you're doing at night, although it still felt super fucking strict to us. Apparently, the social stats are harder to level up, which is interesting because I didn't really feel like they were super hard to level up, except for kindness.
Yeah.
The whole Valentine's Day sequence is extended, which maybe that's a bad thing in my opinion because it kind of dragged out the ending, but that's just me. There's new areas of Mementos. I think like the last like third of Mementos that we saw was not in the original game.
Oh, that's neat.
Obviously, you can play as Akechi when his black figure in the third semester. There are now third tier ultimate personas. Apparently, none of those were available, which is kind of crazy to me. Apparently, Showtime attacks were not a thing in the original game.
Huh. I mean, granted, I only unlocked like 3.
Still, it felt like a core part of the battle system to me, just watching you anyway.
I did it multiple times every time it gave me the option.
Yeah. Apparently, the will seeds are a new thing.
Interesting.
The grappling hook. Futaba has her own finishing touch, which is cool. Apparently, most of the major boss battles were altered at least slightly, and in some cases, a lot, as we apparently learned.
Yeah. Oh, we learned the hard way on that one.
You don't unlock the baton pass until later than we did.
That
which
would
is-
suck.
Yeah, I don't know when you unlock it in the original, but
Like, that was key to battle.
this is a major thing. Apparently, in the original version, your guns did not automatically reload between battles. It was
Oh,
like-
that's garbage.
yeah. I feel like you would just use it up instantly.
You would.
So the status effects: dizzy, forget, and confuse ends after the target is hit, and confuse doesn't last as long. Apparently, that was different.
That's not terrible. Those didn't get used a whole lot anyway.
I'm looking through here to make sure there's not anything else that we really need to make sure we mention.
Some new personas.
Yeah, the fusion alarm apparently was not a thing in the original.
Oh, that's interesting.
That seemed essential to me. The Thieves' Den. There's a bunch of new music, some of it vocal, and the new vocal music is great for the most part.
Oh, yeah, it's banging.
The main battle theme changed. They added more voice acting.
That's
Apparently
nice.
some
The
of
voice acting was good in this.
Yeah, apparently some of the anime scenes, like the fully animated cartoon scenes, apparently those were actually added from the Persona 5 anime that came out after the original,
It looks it.
which is interesting. Apparently Kaneshiro and Chihaya's voice actors were replaced because their original voice actors passed away, which is
R.I.P.
sad. Yeah. This is the big one. I bolded it here on the list. Lala Escargot is now voiced.
That is Scott's favorite character.
Oh, honey.
Oh, honey.
I do love the part where you can go work for her, and one of the options is like, do I have to do dress and drag to work here?
Oh, yeah. And she was like, oh, honey, you dress however you want.
Right. This was a big controversy. I'm not going to talk about this at length because we did almost a whole episode about it, but there was a controversial scene where an older gay couple sort of sexually harass Ryuji in the original. That was toned down by the translation team, so kudos to them.
Yes, I will say they did a good job on toning it down. I still find it
It's
a little
still
creepy.
kind of icky, but
Yeah, there's still some cringe there that I'm not 100% comfortable with. But like you said, if you want to hear the full thoughts, go to Patreon, throw some money at them, and you can listen to that Aftercast show.
it's an early aftercast. I don't remember which one exactly.
Like 1 or 2, I think.
They included the option to have all the voice acting be Japanese, which I know a lot of our Weeboo listeners will enjoy. And of course, 4K PS4 Pro support.
Thank
I
God.
didn't even realize. Yeah. So that's about it for all like the individual elements of the game. I guess this was both of our first like real experience to Persona games were, and I know Corey, you were very interested in it because we watched a friend of ours play like the first couple hours of it years ago, the original Persona 5, and even from that, I remember you being like, "I want to play that game." Which I mean, it's a pretty traditional RPG, just with like a lot of more like social mechanics. So, after having played through it yourself and seen everything, what's sort of like your overall feelings as like a newcomer to the series and somebody who's not like maybe especially into RPGs?
I got to be honest. What sucked me in originally was the style of the game. That really cool kind of half anime, half artsy kind of look to the game sucked me in. The cool music. So, got to give them credit. They made the game look just really interesting enough to pull me in.
The UI is amazing.
Yeah, it's a home run when it comes to how the game looks. And after playing it, the battle system is phenomenal. The story is just it's just there, and it makes you want to just keep playing. It makes you fall in love with it. What do they say? The devil's in the details. Every little detail of this game, I feel like, was so thought out and so planned, and you feel like they just poured everything they had into the smallest details. The tiny little cutscenes between the showtime, the battle animations, the boss animations, the palaces, the music, the timing of it, the loading screens, everything. It all just feels so put together. And I cannot compliment them enough on how they've made this, how they presented this game.
Yeah. As for me, I had my controller or my hands on the controller like 2 or 3 times throughout the whole experience, and that was just to like help Corey with the puzzles, some of the harder palace puzzles. Not to say that you're dumb or anything, honey.
No. It was literally like I would hand him like, Scott, you have to do this.
Yeah, just pure frustration.
I will throw the controller through the TV if you don't figure this puzzle out.
And there were a lot of periods throughout the game where I was like having a hard time maintaining an attention span because there, like I commented on earlier, there were some lulls story-wise, and I generally understood what he was doing in the battle systems or with the battle system, but also not entirely. So I wasn't like engaged with like the tactics of what he was doing necessarily. A lot of times, I did find like the palace exploration, just even though a lot of the palaces looked pretty cool and had cool music, I felt like the palace exploration was kind of dull a lot of times.
See, I loved it.
But with the story and like the characters and the UI and the voice acting and all of that, like when that was on full cylinder, my attention was like, eyes glued to the screen. And I was very invested in what was happening with the story and the characters. And I could tell just from watching him that there was a lot going on with the gameplay, and it seemed fun. Like I would not be against going and playing through this game again myself, despite having poured 180 plus hours into it, just watching it.
I support that decision.
He's gonna make this happen one day. I just know it. Maybe sooner than I think. But yeah, I really loved it. I thought it was a great game, like a great game. But especially the gameplay. There, like I said, nothing perfect, but nothing is really. But with that out of the way, are we ready to rank this bitch?
I have been waiting on this for weeks.
Let's rank it.
Don't see it through dreams that can't come true. No more tears just drop from your cheeks anymore. You want me to strive for
Okay. So our ratings, our categories here are story, combat, non-combat, graphics, music and sound, and overall feel. So as usual, because I did not actually play the game, only Corey's rankings will count.
Oh, first time only my rankings count.
I think that is the first time actually.
It is.
However, I, I think we only counted your rankings for Fire Emblem too. Um,
Actually, you're right.
but because I spent 180 plus hours watching this bitch, I do feel like like I can actually comment on it and give my own rankings as well.
I'll allow it this time.
So I'll go first for story. I find this a very interesting category because there's like literally hours and hours of dialogue. All the characters are great. Well, I won't say all, but all the main characters are great. Um, I think we said in the development section, the development history, that there's like 1,503 cutscenes or something crazy like that. So I feel a little conflicted because on the other hand, it's like they do spend a lot of time like saying the same things over and over. There are some lulls in the story, but at the end of the day, like I said, I really cared about what was happening in the characters, and so I think I'm gonna give it a 9. There's a couple arcs that really throw me off, like even though a lot of interesting things and character resolutions happen in like the God of Control arc in particular towards the end, like that thing has got a little bit too anime. Like now we have to kill God for me, cheesy stuff. There's some weird things like Kawakami's arc and sexual harassment. It's not perfect. Um, and I thought about giving it an 8, but I feel like that would be not doing justice to how I really felt about the game's story at the end. But that's just me. What about you?
This game had a habit of, after every single story scene, making me want just constantly asking, well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? I was always drawn into this story. I There were even times, for instance, the scene where Akechi shoots Joker, where I literally just gasped. I was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah, some great twists.
This game, and the fact that it's given to you from a point of view where during Sai's investigation of Joker explains what happened during the story, how it starts out at the casino and you have to work your way there. I love the presentation of it, and it always kept me interested. This story is absolutely phenomenal. It is a 10.
Holy shit. Okay. You don't think there was any low points for you or things that
Story-wise, no. It kept me hooked the entire time with the whole interactions between Akechi and Sai, and where's Akechi going to go? What's Akechi doing? What's Sai doing? Is Makoto going to be able to work with Sai? And then the cutscenes back to Sai where she's investigating us and it's told from that point of view. I loved it.
All right. Uh, well, I agree. The story is fantastic. So, combat. I feel a little less qualified to talk about this one because I don't think I ever touched the controller during a battle sequence. But the from what I could tell, absorb from watching Corey, did feel like it was a pretty cool combat system. The UI is great. You feel like badasses while you're fighting. There's lots of like intricacies as far as like the different elements where you don't know what they're weak against until you try it, and the baton passes seemed awesome. And then you've got like 3 different versions of super attacks that make you feel like a badass, like the all-out attacks and the showdowns and the finishers and the negotiations and all that. And you've got like different ways to attack. Like do you want to use your persona? Do you want to just use the character? Do you want to, shoot at them? Whatever. I think the main detractor, if I was to point out one thing that was pretty bullshit, would be, if Joker dies, it's over. But I guess that's, that could differ based on the person reviewing it. Uh, I think that I will give this one a 9 as well.
The overall, again, it was a great aspect of this game. The battle animations are phenomenal. The Showtime cutscenes phenomenal. The baton pass was I loved the baton pass. Being able to use your personas and the persona animations were great. The boss animations were great. The dialogue during battles was great. Negotiations, being able to like take an enemy and make them one of your personas was great. So a lot of good points. However, I do have to point out, like you said, if Joker dies, the setback that gives you can sometimes just be astronomical. And I feel like sometimes that's too much of a price to pay. So I did not like that. And as I told you off air multiple times, that battle with Okumura almost making me put the game down. There's things they could have improved. Okumura did not need to be that hard, and they didn't need to make you pay such a big price if Joker fell. So with those, if they would have fixed those two, it would have been a 10. But for those reasons, I have to give it a 9.
Okay. So that's a 9 for Corey. I was honestly expecting you to take away slightly more for that. But the next category is non-combat. I feel like this one's more interesting because I feel like the style of gameplay that Persona has outside of combat is very unique to Persona. It's something that I can't really think of anything else that's anything like it. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. As far as like the social management and the calendar system and all the stuff you do out in the real world, I did like that stuff, but I feel like sometimes there was a little too much of it between story parts. There wasn't anything particularly super interesting about it other than the confidant scenes. So that's there's a slight detractor there. And then, like I said, I felt like the palace exploration was actually not that great. It looked cool, but just the way everything animates and like some of the puzzles were really obtuse. Mementos was boring. I feel like Persona loses some points here. But also, there's nothing like super wrong with it. And also, the fact that there's not an autosave would go here as well. So,
Yep.
I'm debating between like a 7 or an 8. I think I'm gonna go with a 7. No, I'll be nice. It was interesting most of the time.
How do you feel? Give it what you feel.
Oh man, I'm gonna give it a 7. I don't feel like it's that fun. It's just interesting because of the story.
And I get where you're coming from as a viewer. I totally understand that, because if I was just watching that, I think I would probably been maybe a little bored too. But playing it, I have a different perspective. I like the fact that during non-combat, it gave me the option or options to do what I wanted. And I never felt like there was nothing I could, there was nothing to do. There was always something to do, which I liked. It was very rare. I found myself like, all right, let's hurry this up. I just need to go to bed and get the next day. That was a very, very rare occurrence. So I always felt like I had something to do that could help me. Could I get new accessories? Could I go buy new stuff? Could I get a confidant scene? I had a smorgasbord of things to do. So I liked that. However, I do think they may have packed a little much because, like I mentioned earlier, there were some places on the map I never even got to see. They were on the map, but you can't just go to them. You have to, there's a confidant scene there. You have to invite somebody to go with you to see them. So it was always on my map as like a tease, like just a little cock tease of like, I haven't seen that yet and I want to see it. The big one is the no fucking autosave. Drives me bonkers. So
I mean, this is a modern day game, so
yeah, so I expect an autosave. maybe an unpopular opinion, I don't know, but for me, kills me. If they would have had an autosave, non-combat would have been almost perfect for me. But the fact that it cost me hours and hours and hours, how many nights did I bitch to you over and over about no autosave?
Oh yeah.
It was furious. So I was going to give it a 9, but the more I think about it, it deserves an 8 just because I lost hours of gameplay.
And combine that with the whole thing with like, if Joker dies, then you're done.
Yeah, then well, that's combat.
Yeah. But it's just like perfect storm as far as like losing progress because of lack of autosave.
True, yeah. I mean, if both of those happen, you're fucked.
And if you can't beat the palace boss, then you're fucked even more because like your option at that point is to go back a week, which could be like
which
10
I had
hours.
to do a couple times.
Okay, so the next category is graphics. I might have a bit of a controversial opinion here because I do not, especially for a PS3/PS4 game, I do not think that this game looks very good. It is highly stylized, very anime cartoonish, so it will age well. We will be able to go back and play this game in 10 years and not think it looks like shit or whatever. But like during the cutscenes, the characters literally just like stand there with mouth flaps. They might have some gestures or whatever. The environments generally look good. I'll give it that. And the characters look cool. It's just like they're not animated well. And I don't know. I just feel like it looks very like generic and bland kind of outside of the art style. What I will say is that the UI is amazing. It's like the best UI I've ever seen in a video game. Just the way like the menus fly around and move and how they look. Like it's interesting just to scroll through menus, basically. I think I mentioned this at one point in one of the last episodes. Sometimes I felt like the UI even trumped what was happening with the action on screen. Like during battles, I was like missing what was going on during the battle because the UI was so interesting.
Yeah, even the start menu, like every like menu you pick, Joker's like pose changes.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of games that do that. FF13's menu reminds me of that kind of. But
this one is probably the only game I would say ever gives FF13's pause menu a run for its money.
Yeah. So kudos to whoever did that. We probably went over that in development history. But I'm going to give it an 8 because it doesn't look bad. It just, I feel like it, and the UI does boost it up for me some, but I don't think the actual like character graphics and animations and all that looks very good either.
All right. Well, I may have an unpopular opinion here too, because yes, their facial expressions don't change a whole lot. They're very flat, very generic. Joker, I don't think you ever during cutscenes ever see like his eyeballs because he's always wearing the glasses. But that being said, the style of this game embraces that. And the style of this game just makes, they went for it and they went for it 100%. And I feel like they nailed that. The UI is fantastic. The opening to this game is fantastic. The cutscenes. That's my only part with this. Is like I feel like the cutscenes were so much more anime versus what Atlas was going for during gameplay.
Yeah.
But I struggle with myself because the UI of the game, the battle system, the little details of like the showtime battles, the effects during battles. I'll give it a. This is hard for me because I want to say, part of me says 10 because the style of this game was beautiful. It's what made me fall in love with the game to begin with. But then if I think 10, like FF7 Remake had like facial expressions and like body language in a way. This one,
that game looks way better. It's not as stylized, but
but the style of this game is just so beautiful. But you're right. I've said on previous episodes, 10 is perfection. This was not perfection, so I'll give it a 9.
Okay. The whole thing with me is like I remember there are like some fully animated, not the anime cutscenes, but like fully animated just scenes in general where all the characters are moving more dramatically. And
Those are the ones I was talking about.
every time it did one of those, I was like, I wish there was more of that.
Well, see, I felt like the transition was a little stark. Like that was a stark difference between those fully animated cutscenes and like the game style. Like that was a very stark difference.
Yeah. All right, music and sound. This is another one I feel very conflicted on. I don't really have any problems with the sound. I don't think it's like, anything that super impressed me either. As far as the music goes, I feel very conflicted because there are some absolute bangers on this soundtrack, especially all the vocal themes. Like, there's not a bad vocal theme in the bunch, really, and you hear those a lot. Like, the battle theme is a vocal theme, and some of the palace themes are vocals, and a lot of the incidental music is pretty good too. However, there are some tracks on the soundtrack, a lot of tracks on the soundtrack actually, that are kind of forgettable and mundane and boring. So I can't give it a 10 for that reason, even though I kind of want to, because the vocal tracks are so amazing, in my opinion. In particular, Rivers in the Desert, which is like one of the final boss themes, is one of the best final boss themes or boss themes I've heard in RPGs in general. Um, all that when I was trying to decide like the track list as to what tracks to play during the transitions to this 3-part review, I was like, I ran out of space. I was like, fuck, I can't include these. So I'm gonna give it a 9. Not sure it deserves it, and like the part of me does want to give it a 10 just because of how great some of the music is. I just don't feel like all of it is there.
Music and sound. Can I give it a 15? Because that's where I'm at with this. And the reason I say that is because it is I can't remember the last time I've went on YouTube and looked for a game's full soundtrack and listened to it multiple times. Every single time this game kicked on, I was excited to hear that opening theme. I was excited to hear that battle theme. When they introduced the new battle theme, I think when you battle Sai, fucking loved it. Like it sets the tone. Like it fits the game so perfectly. It drags you in. This is, in my opinion, from games I've played, the best game soundtrack I've heard.
I'm gonna have to make you go back and listen to the actual full soundtrack instead of just the vocal themes. But
I've listened to the non-vocal themes too,
okay,
and I still enjoy them.
I really don't get where you're coming from.
It sets the mood of the game, especially like if you just go back and listen to it. Yes, it might seem a little boring, but when you put it in context of where you're at in the game and what you're doing in the game, it matches beautifully. You have to have
for
both
example,
aspects.
I hated that Mementos theme until you got to like the lower floors and it picked up some, and we spent hours and hours and hours there. But
See, when I was in Mementos, I liked the music.
Okay, well, I would say agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, you're only 1 point higher than me. So overall feel, this category is just like, just in general, how we felt about the game. I'm gonna give it a 9. I really loved it, and just as a pure spectator, like I thought it was awesome. It did not disappoint me at all, and I went in. My expectations weren't super high, despite having heard from so many people that this was an amazing game. But I just really liked even just watching it a lot of times, and I totally understand why this game has sort of like got its like notched out of place in like the hearts of RPG fans, and why it got so much attention, and why I hear about it so much even today, years later after the initial release. So yeah, like overall positivity. Like if somebody asked me, how do you feel about Persona 5? I'm gonna be like, that's a fucking great game. You know, it may not be for everybody, but for RPG fans, I'd be like, you need to play it.
All right, I'm torn, and I need a little advice of yours.
Okay.
As I've made very obvious, Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time. I love that game. It got a 10 from me. Loved it. If a game is in your top 5, do you think they deserve 10s?
I I really think that a 10 would be a game that you thought was perfect.
That I thought was absolutely perfect, no mistakes at all, anywhere.
No, because no game is perfect, and I guess I'm just contradicting myself. But if you really feel like this is like one of your top 5 games you've ever played, then I would give it a 10.
This game is in my top 5. Other than Breath of the Wild and some like old games. No games made me want to go back and do New Game Plus like this game has. I want to
That's
see.
true. You were like asking to do that like not even a week after we had finished it.
Yeah, I want to go back and see the Confidants. I want to hear that music again. I want to do the wandering around Tokyo. I want to go see those other cities. Like,
I want to do that too. I want to play.
Yeah, true. And this game, I think I've made obvious through these reviews. I've heaped love on it. I really, truly do love this game. And it is a game that I would very happily go back and play again. Yes, it has its flaws. And I've made those obvious with the Okumura fight. Oh God, I don't know though. I'm thinking about that autosave and makes me not give it a 10.
Right.
Drop it to a 9. I can't give it a 10 because of that autosave. I lost so many hours, got so frustrated.
I didn't even think about that. You complained a lot about certain things in this game. I don't.
Yeah, I can't give it a 10 just because of actually those are the 2 main things. The 3 main things is no autosave, Joker dying in battle, and the Okumura fight. And I know some people, we talked about it in Discord months back, didn't really seem to have a problem with the Okumura fight.
Yeah, who was it that had played both Royal and the original? And
was it Abrick?
Yeah, it was Abrac. You're right.
But I could not get the hang of that Okumura fight, the no autosave. I still stand by that this is a top 5 game for me because I truly loved it and I'm excited to go back and play it again. But if they just had fixed those things, it would have been perfect.
Gotcha. Okay. So that leads us to our last category, which is final boss. This is a bonus category. We don't actually count this towards our final rating. It's just sort of like a fun thing. So this is interesting because the final boss of the version of the game that we played was Maruki and
right.
Adam Cadmon and all that. So I feel like we have to base it on that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that was a really great boss fight because you struggled with it quite a bit.
But it was never to the point of like maddening.
Right. I think it might have taken you more than one try, if I remember right.
Oh, it did. It took, I think it was like 3 or 4.
Which can be frustrating because you can like, these battles can go on for like an hour before you lose, depending on, how it goes. But just the overall story surrounding all that and just the music that's playing during the whole thing, I really liked it. I thought it was really cool.
Yep.
I do wish that the vocal part of the music that goes on during that had kicked in a little earlier because by the time the hardest phase is the first part of the boss fight, which doesn't have the vocal version. And then the other 2 sort of feel like they fly by, in my opinion. But I'll give it a 9 because it did look hard, and I really I was kind of glued to the screen during all that. If I was ranking the Shido, well, not Shido, the God of Control, I don't remember you having problems with that.
No,
really.
God of Control was too easy.
Yeah, so I would probably have given that like a 7 or maybe 8.
Yeah, that would have been low for me.
Yeah.
For final boss with Maruki, probably no surprise, I'm gonna go 10. I felt like it was the perfect level of difficulty. Like you said, I didn't fly through it. It took me multiple times, but the times that it took me, it was me learning how he fought, and there were multiple stages, so you kind of had to learn as you went. So it took multiple tries, but it was never like maddening where you just got angry. It was just like, oh, okay, so that's how this battle, that's how this is going to work. So next time I know to do this. you learned something new every time, so it was never maddening. And the music was awesome. I really liked the cutscenes with Maruki, especially you remember in that one where the tentacles are up out of the ground, and he's got his persona back. Every other turn, he would like specifically address a member of your battle party, and was like, he would call them out on their quote unquote weakness, and was like, "Why don't you just let me help you be happy?" Like, I thought that was a really cool touch. The final sequence with the gigantic ass Adam Cadmon. Granted, you didn't really have to fight him; you just kind of like protected yourself. But that last little cutscene was really cool. And like you said, it just kind of glues you to the screen, and you're just like sucked in and captivated. So I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I never got angry, but I wasn't like, well, that was fucking easy. What a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. And Maruki, I mentioned this last time. He's a great villain, like one of the best villains I've seen in video games.
Oh yeah,
so
he was
that elevated
fantastic
it too. What would you have given it if it had been God of Control? Just for
probably a 6 or a 7. Because like I said, I flew through that battle. It was easy, and I don't want it to be easy. I don't want it to be like maddening hard like Okumura was. But
yeah,
I feel like this was a perfect balance.
Okay, so like I said at the beginning, I've calculated everything up, and because I did not actually play the game, only Corey's score actually counts. So I gave it a 51 out of, or my subtotal was 85%, and Corey gave it a 92%. And so that just means that the overall RPG after your score is 92 out of 100.
Hey, how about that?
Are you surprised that your final score was 92, considering how much you loved the game? I feel like maybe if you could actually pick without adding up, you might have given it a little higher.
No, I'm happy with that.
I think that's about right for this game, personally. I feel like that's fair. Like I said, I had some negative things to say, but like I said, overall, I think it's a really good game.
If it had a better save system alone, it would have been higher.
Yeah. And just as a point of information, if we had included my score with it, it would have been overall an 89%. So not too much lower. But yeah, so that's about it for our rankings. Let me look here. I asked last minute for some feedback. Satan had a couple things to say. He said, no, Kaboski did. Loved the story in the game. Really enjoyed the upgrades in the combat from the Royal version. Probably has one of the best video game soundtracks out there. All right.
Amen.
I mostly agree. Satan said, this is blasphemy in the VGM community, especially video game music for RPGs, but I don't care for Persona music at all. LOL. I prefer my JRPG music to be more melodic and not J-pop.
You're dead to me.
You're dead. Yeah. That's pretty much all we got, because I had literally asked for this feedback while we were recording. But
how dare you?
I get where Satan's coming from. He the music's not for everybody, I don't think. It just really resonates with us and a lot of other people.
Did you see what Abrick sent right after Satan sent his message?
Oh, it's a GIF. I didn't realize it was a GIF till I clicked on it. It's an anime guy. He's holding a blank piece of paper, and he turns around and it says delete this, and then a gun comes out from behind the paper.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, we really wanted to have a guest on for this episode, but it just didn't work out logistics wise. But anyway, I think that about wraps it up for our Persona 5 Royal review. We made it.
I warned you. I had a lot of feelings about this.
Yeah, you did. All right, well, let's move on to our outro. Let me try that again since I didn't have the fade set.
Oh, good. I get to jam out again.
Yeah.
Great outro song, by the way.
All right, well, I guess let's just close it out and move on to our outro then.
Find it together. I believe we can fly up in the sky. One day we may just be able to touch down on the star of the
By the way, that is one of the best tracks on the soundtrack, and it plays during like a 1 minute cutscene, and I think that's it during the game.
Just listening to that though makes me happy.
It's at a very epic part of the game, to be fair, but I think it's when Joker's like running up the tower to face Maruki at the end.
That sounds right around there. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. Next week, the reason we recorded this on a Wednesday night is because Corey and I are gonna be on vacation, and
Whoop,
so
whoop.
that's like a week and a half from now. So it's not really clear what the next episode is gonna be. It could be something totally random that Rich and Jay come up with, or it could be the first part of our RPG Club Wild Arms review. Just depends on how things shake out. But I hope you guys look forward to it anyway. That'll be episode 37, I believe. Another update, reminder real quick. The RPG Club, speaking of, it's still going on. As of this recording, nominations are going live. But by the time this episode goes to the public, the voting will have begun, and that will end on the 18th. So keep an eye out to see what games have been successfully nominated and voted on. There's a lot of good picks so far. We're still missing a few picks, so I don't want to like go over the whole list or anything at this point. But I'm looking forward to the next RPG Club. Hopefully it'll be something that we can all enjoy, maybe a little more than Wild Arms, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So why don't you give us some plugs, Corey?
All right. So if you have enjoyed this podcast or this broadcast on Twitch or any of us, if you just like looking at us, why don't you go to your podcast app, whatever it may be, and give these guys a rate and review, preferably 5 stars. But this is how you can make this podcast more visible to others, especially in the community. This is one of the best ways to help is just by leaving a review and rating, because it kind of elevates the podcast in whatever app you may use, and more people might see the podcast, and it can really help us grow. So go wherever it may be, Apple, Spotify, whatever, and throw these guys a rating and a review.
We would greatly appreciate it. Also, like we said way earlier in the episode, we have a Patreon. There's lots of great benefits. You get early episode access. They come out like 2 or 3 days earlier, usually. You get ad-free episodes. You don't have to hear all those promos and anchor ads. We got the Aftercast bonus episodes where me and Rich and Jay and sometimes Corey get together and just shoot the shit about whatever like tangentially related topic that could possibly have anything to do with video games. And we don't care about how political we get there.
That's right.
There are extra reviews, mostly non-RPGs, mostly me and Corey, but occasionally some other people. We're working on a Last of Us 1 with Jay right now. We've got a Last of Us 2 one in the works and more. And we've been doing this for a little bit now, so there's like a backlog of content for you guys to experience if you were to subscribe.
There's quite a few out there.
Yeah. And like we said, the RPG Club, our patrons are the ones who get to decide what games are nominated and what games are voted on, what game we end up playing for months on end together as a community. So that's a pretty sweet benefit. And there's even more that you get out of it. So please go and check it out at patreon.com/RPG After Years.
And speaking of throwing money at these guys, they're not going to get a lot of it, but there's a merch store now. So I believe that's on Redbubble. And if you go to Redbubble, is it redbubble.com/RPG After Years?
It's redbubble.com/people/RPG After Years/explore.
Okay, so you can find it on Redbubble. But go there, check out their page. They got a lot of cool merch. We unfortunately are not wearing the shirts tonight, but we both have already bought
Both
20.
of these are from Redbubble, not our store.
They are both Redbubble. But it's a little weird, the layout. Just go to the designs tab. That way you can like see everything. It gives you more options. But they've got a lot of cool merch over there. I mean, everything from shirts to magnets to stickers to PJ pants to socks to mugs to everything.
Yeah, and I recently just added the new like host art that Mrs. Dizzy did for the hosts, to where you can get like magnets and stickers of like Warrior Scott, me, or Red Mage Jay, and so on. I don't know why you guys would want those unless you really like us, but
A little weird.
Yeah. And then, like we said earlier, we are also on Twitch. We're live. usually live every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, but we stream anytime we record, or at least try to. Corey and I are on vacation, so we got a little weird schedule this week. But when you're in the Twitch chat, you can, throw out your thoughts and feelings and opinions about what we're saying during the episode, and we'll interact with you live. So it's a great way to actually be a part of the show. And that's at twitch.tv/RPG After Years.
Another way to chat with these guys is if you want to give them, I don't know, like maybe a show suggestion, a topic to discuss. You want to give them a little bit of feedback, but you don't want to do it in like a podcast rating. You can actually email them at rpgafteryears@gmail.com.
Yes.
How else can they get in touch with you guys?
We have a Discord, and it's actually pretty lively. We have a lot of people there. We mentioned Abrac and Satan and Disa and Mini BT and all those fine folks. They're all in our Discord. We're talking.
Everybody's there.
We're talking all day, every day. It's a really lively community, and like I said on last week's episode, I'm a part of some bigger or Discord groups that have a lot more people in them that are not nearly as active as ours. So it's really worthwhile if you just want to go in and shoot the shit and feel like you have some friends on the internet. And then the last way to get in touch with us is Twitter. Most of us are pretty lively. The show is at RPG Years, and you can find me at The Scott Spot.
And you can find me at VFL Corey, and that's Corey with an E.
Right. And that'll do it for this week's episode. And finally, the Persona 5 review.
Woo!
Who knew 180 hours could go by so fast? Hopefully we were able to steal all of your hearts. And next week, we'll do something to be decided. Maybe Wild Arms. But until then, I'm Scott.
And my rehabilitation has been completed. I'm Corey.
We'll catch you guys next time for episode 37 of the RPG After Years. Bye.
Bye, guys. Keep
Have
it bonking.
Bonk all the way.
The beast has been slain. The world has been saved. Our heroes are basking in the after years. They rest in the tavern for all to hear the tale of how they banish their fear. Revel in the peace that reigns through the land. All will know it was by our heroes' hands. Here in the after years. Here in the RPG after years. Here in the RPG after years.
And there we go. Persona 5 is done.